afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our topic for today comes from the World Medical Association's Medical Ethics Manual for physicians and colleagues. Okay, so chapter 4 of this manual talks about the different duties and responsibilities of the doctors to their fellow doctors. So the objective of this discussion for today is, after working through this chapter, you should be able to first describe how physicians should behave towards one another. Okay, your relationship between you and your professional colleagues. Next, justify reporting unethical behavior of colleagues. Another, identify the main ethical principles relating to cooperation with others in the care of the patients. Okay, because the study of medicine class is very broad. Okay, it has many fields. Okay, example, OB-GYN. Okay, there is the heart, there is the neurologist, there is the urologist. Okay, so it involves many fields and you have to specialize in a certain field. So treatment regimen, sometimes class, requires multi-sectoral approach. Okay, so if the patient is having problem with, for example, the heart, okay, so there is problem with the heart, more or less, he needs the assistance of course, if there's problem with the heart, the lungs will be affected because if the heart cannot pump oxygen, so there will be impairment in the oxygen blood exchange. Okay, that would affect the lung. Okay, and so on and so forth. And then next, explain how to resolve conflicts with the other healthcare providers. So before we begin our formal discussion, I will present to you a case study which we will answer at the end of the lesson. Okay? So this is the scenario class. Case study number 3. Dr. C, a newly appointed anesthetist in a city hospital, is alarmed by the behavior of the senior surgeon in the operating room. The surgeon uses out-of-date techniques that prolong operations and result in greater post-operative pain and longer recovery time. Moreover, he makes frequent crude jokes about the patients that obviously bother the assisting nurses. As a more junior staff member, Dr. C is reluctant to criticize the surgeon personally or to report him to higher authorities. However, he feels that he must do something to improve the situation. Okay? So this is the scenario. And then within the course of our discussion, we will analyze and then we will make a choice or decision on how to approach this scenario. So you are the younger doctor faced with an older colleague, okay, who uses out-of-date techniques and making jokes to the patient. So if you are the younger doctor, how will you approach or how will you handle the situation? So we will answer that after our discussion in this chapter. So what are the challenges to medical authority? Physicians belong to a profession that has traditionally functioned in an extremely hierarchical fashion. So when you say hierarchical class, it means there is a hierarchy. Okay? Like seniority. You are the junior, and then above you is the senior. Above the senior is the head. Above the head is the supervisor. Above the supervisor is the chief. Above the chief is the directors. Above the directors is the owner, and so on and so forth. Okay? So that's why in medicine, there is what you call, in Latin term, respondeat superior. Okay? So when you say respondeat superior, if the lower employee, for example, you are the doctor, and then you committed malpractice or negligence, and you are employed in the hospital. Okay? So more often than not, people above you will also be held liable. Okay? So last time we discussed the three-pronged liability of a physician. First, the criminal. So when you say criminal acts or criminal liability, highest penalty is imprisonment. Next is the administrative liability. Okay? So highest penalty is the removal or revocation of your license to practice medicine. And then third is the civil liability. Okay? So when you say civil liability, it involves monetary award through damages. Okay? Payment of money. Physicians belong to a profession that has traditionally functioned in an extremely hierarchical fashion, both internally and externally. So there is a corporate structure, okay? The internal structure, the one that I discussed earlier, and then the external structure is the corporate structure of the company, and of course, its relationship to the regulators, okay, or the government. Internally, there are three overlapping hierarchies. The first differentiates among specialties, with some being considered more prestigious and better remunerated than others. The second is within specialties, with academics being more influential than those in private or public practice. And the third relates to the care of specific patients, where the primary caregiver is at the top of the hierarchy, and other physicians, even those with greater seniority and or skill, serve simply as consultants unless the patient is transferred to their care. Okay, so this is the different field. Okay, so internally, this structure denotes certain specialties. Okay, so for example, you are the consultant. Okay, so when you say you are the consultant, it doesn't mean you are employed inside a system, okay, like a healthcare system. Okay, so there are many ways in order to practice medicine. Okay, so for instance, if you are a consultant, so you can be a private contractor, meaning you are just accredited to for example, the hospital. Or you can be employed. You are an employee of an institution, of a healthcare setting. Okay? So the internal structure is different class. Depends on your how are you connected to the company and what are your specialties. Next, externally, physicians have traditionally been at the top of the hierarchy of caregivers, above nurses, and other professionals. So this chapter will deal with ethical issues that arise in both internal and external hierarchies. Okay? So some issues are common to both, others are found only in one another. So these are just matters of reading, class. I will leave this up to you. A cooperative model of decision-making has replaced the authoritarian model that was characteristic of traditional medical paternalism. Okay, so the traditional way class, or the school of thought being utilized in the traditional way is autocratic. Okay, so when you say autocratic, the decision maker comes from one source. Okay, however, today, because of the new trends, because of the advances, the model being utilized is more flexible. Okay, cooperative model. Okay, otherwise known as laissez-faire. Okay, so this change of system or model is because of the evolution of medicine. Okay, class, medicine being more specialized. Okay, like what I said earlier, multi-field. Okay, before, if you are a doctor, you are a general doctor, so you can practice any field in the ancient times. However, today it is more specific. Okay, you can only choose a single field, because otherwise you can be held liable. Okay, remember that the three-pronged liability of a physician. Okay, so these are just matters of reading. Developments such as this are changing the rules of the game for the relationships of physicians with their medical colleagues and other health professionals. So the remainder of this chapter will identify some problematic aspects of this relationship and suggest ways of dealing with them. Okay? So to formally start, relationships with physicians, colleagues, teachers, and students. Okay? So first, let's discuss this matter. As members of the medical profession, physicians have traditionally been expected to treat each other more as family members than as strangers or even as friends. Okay? So brotherhood, sisterhood. Under the World Medical Association, the Declaration of Geneva, it includes the pledge, my colleagues will be my sisters and brothers. Okay? So the Declaration of Geneva, class, is where the Hippocratic Oath is inculcated. Okay? It is like an oath to guide physicians all over the world. So in this pledge, it includes the phrase, my colleagues will be my sisters and brothers. So the interpretation of this requirement has varied from country to country, and over time, for example, where fee for service was the principal or only form of remuneration for physicians, there was a strong tradition of professional courtesy. Okay? So, because the Declaration of Geneva promotes brotherhood and sisterhood among colleagues. So before, when a physician renders some service, of course, the physician expects to be paid. However, today, if a physician renders a service to a colleague, then of course, by virtue of professional courtesy, the physician will not accept payment. Okay? So whereby physician did not charge their colleagues for medical treatment. This practice has declined in countries where third-party reimbursement is available. Okay? So, however, class, if there is a third-party reimbursement, so these are insurance companies. Okay? For example, you are a surgeon, and then your colleague is needs surgery. Of course, the extent of service rendered is very big, very high. So of course, you expect payment. because you are friends, if the doctor cannot pay, of course, you just extend professional courtesy because you are colleagues in the profession. You are brothers, you are sisters in the profession. However, if there is insurance, of course, more often than not, the doctor will collect payment through the insurance company. Okay? So these are just matters of reading, class. I will leave this up to you. So like what I said earlier, in the Hippocratic tradition of medical ethics, physicians owe special respect to their teachers. Okay? So the Declaration of Geneva puts it this way: I will give to my teachers the respect and gratitude that is their due. Okay? So, classic example, class. I am a lawyer and at the same time, your teacher. Okay? Though I am a doctor, I'm not a doctor of medicine. I am a juris doctor. So what is a juris doctor? A juris doctor is a person who studies law, okay, legality. So if I get sick, class, okay, so according to this Declaration of Geneva, you also extend professional courtesy to me being a teacher, okay? But do not worry, class. I am a very, I am the type of person that, if, of course, if you perform something, especially when it is your livelihood, I will pay my due, okay? Or what I owe you, I will pay, okay? So this is just an example of a professional courtesy, okay, being owed to teachers. So although present-day medical education involves multiple student-teacher interactions rather than one-on-one relationship of former times, it is still dependent on the goodwill and dedication of practicing physicians who often receive no remuneration for their teaching activities. Medical students and other medical trainees owe a debt of gratitude to their teachers without whom medical education would be reduced to self-instruction. Okay? So teachers have an obligation to treat their students respectfully and to serve as good role models in dealing with patients. Okay? Of course, teachers class are your role models. That's why in this profession, we really need better teachers. Okay? Teachers have a particular obligation not to require students to engage in unethical practices. Examples of such practices that have been reported in medical journals include medical students obtaining patient consent for medical treatment in situations where a fully qualified health professional should do this. Okay? Performing pelvic examination on anesthetized or newly dead patients without consent, and performing unsupervised procedures that, although minor, are considered by some students to be beyond their competence. Okay? So these are examples of practices, class, which is not allowed if you are a student. Because remember, the practice of medicine is only to those persons who has achieved the minimum requirement of the law. Okay? So one minimum requirement is the passing of the board examination. Okay? Another, the taking of the oath. Okay? Another, continuing good moral character. Okay? So these are requirements, class, which is condition precedent When you say condition precedent, it means it is mandatory, necessary. Otherwise, if you don't have this requirement, you are illegally engaging practice of medicine. Okay, illegal engagement of practice of medicine. And of course, you can be held liable. Students concerned about ethical aspects of their education should have access to such mechanisms where they can raise concerns. Okay? So these are just matters of reading. I will leave this up to you. Take note, class, that all our discussions are in the files. Okay, so for reference, just check the notes in the files. So for their part, medical students are expected to exhibit high standards of ethical behavior as appropriate for future physicians. Okay, so of course, all of you will become doctors. All of you, even though not at the same time, but I believe that all of you will become physicians, good physicians. They should treat other students as colleagues and be prepared to offer help when it is needed, including corrective advice in regard to unprofessional behavior. They should also contribute fully to shared projects and duties such as study assignments and on-call service. Okay? So, as students class, medical students, teachers should treat you, so you are still students, as partners. Okay? So, not a partner like a colleague, but partner to make the lives of the patients or to make the profession um, to raise the dignity of the medical profession. Okay, to enhance the like research, to enhance the practice of medicine, and so on and so forth, because all of you will become doctors later on. So whether these teachers like it or not, you will be the future generation of medicine. Okay? Next, reporting unsafe or unethical practice. Question. You have a colleague, your best friend. So, within the course of your friendship or your practice, your best friend committed lapses. Lapses that resulted to the detriment of the patient. Okay? So as a physician, what will you do? Okay? So class, I think due to lack of material time, I will end the discussion here. Do you have any question, class? Questions? There is none. I will end the recording.